Paladin got its magical powers through the blessings of the Earth Tree. As you progress in the game, however, you will see that burning the Earth Tree is an inevitability. Burning the Earth Tree has had catastrophic results in the world, but not only that, it changed our Holy Warrior as well. But thankfully it did change the Paladin for the better, as it has ascended the Paladin to new levels of unfounded powers never seen before. Outside of holy, crucible and pure lighting related magic, the Paladin now also possesses the ability to cast blasphemous magic and draconic lighting, or in other words red lighting, thanks to the corruption to the Earth Tree. This build is the evolved and late game version of my holy Paladin build. If you haven't watched part 1, make sure to watch it as well, especially if you're starting a new playthrough, because it is without a doubt the strongest Paladin build that you can make at the start of the game, and a god build for the early and mid game. You will see, however, that a pure holy damage based build can't be the strongest late game fate and strength build, as pretty much all of the prolific enemies in the game have high absorption against holy damage. That can be a problem, but it's really not a problem, because thankfully the sacred affinity on our great stars has the exact same type of scaling distribution as the flame art affinity, so it is an easy fix without having to change everything around. And even with all the absorption of your enemies in the late game, you yourself have all the health absorption in the world that you need, and due to your infinite sustain, you can just out-trade your opponents. The real question here, however, is what is actually the best Paladin weapon in the game if you consider all options, including the late game stuff? Well, there are 6 weapons in the game that have a healing component. These weapons are the Great Stars weapon, the Butchering Knife, Serpent God's Curved Sword, Great Horn Hammer, Blasphemous Blade, and the Devourer's Scepter's Ash of War. In the previous part, I really went deep into Great Stars and why it's such a great weapon, so I won't be covering it again in this video, as I already said everything that needs to be said about that weapon. However, if you do a comparison between these weapons and you compare the healing capabilities, the AR and unique benefits of these weapons, you'll see that Butchering Knife is essentially just a weaker Great Stars, and that the Serpent's God's Curved Sword, Great Horn Hammer and Devourer's Scepter are all weaker variations of the Blasphemous Blade. Add to that the Blasphemous Blade's Ash of War, Taker's Flame, heals you as well and does insane damage with other benefits I'll go into later. Overall, the Blasphemous Blade is probably the strongest strength and fate mixed type of weapon in the game when you consider its utility in combination with its crazy damage output. This does not mean that the Great Stars is not a good option for the late game as well. You can actually use these weapons both in conjunction if you want, because my late game Paladin setup is practically going to be identical for both weapons, so you can swap around for variety. But for the reason that the Blasphemous Blade is actually just extremely powerful and a option now, you'll definitely want to pick it up for a strength and fate build.
No!
3, 2,
You can get the Blasphemous Blade after killing Rykard, so it's not really a weapon you'll get early on normally. Kill him and you can turn in his remembrance to get the Blasphemous Blade. Now the Blasphemous Blade gives you infinite sustain, because every time you kill something with it, you restore 4% of your health plus 40 flat HP. So when you're exploring the world or going through dungeons with a lot of mobs, you basically just never die. Then when you use its Ash of War, you will restore 10% of your max HP plus 150 flat HP on hit. And the Ash of War is actually a ranged Ash of War with a very long and nice range. So it is much easier to get that life steal going compared to some of the melee healing options in the game. Taker's Flames also hits like a truck and can easily poise break enemies, so that's a nice thing to get those critical hits going. Or just push your enemies off any ledge with the force of Taker's Flames and get the job done quickly like that. The blade's physical aspects, so when you actually use it as a blade in melee range, also does insane damage, making it a very powerful strength and fate build option. This weapon is really just an all-round monster, and that's why you want to get it. Don't get it twisted though, underneath the corruption we can still see the purity of what was once good. Something with such a pure heart can't possibly become all evil, no matter the amount of external interference. The demonization altered the paladin's powers and appearance and as a result made him much stronger, but it wasn't powerful enough to break the deeply ingrained righteous nature of the paladin, which is also the reason that he can still cast his old abilities. Below the surface, the paladin still has tendencies to do what's good for mankind, even in his demonic appearance, hence the paradox in the name. However, if you're still not subscribed, then the demon paladin will hunt you down. So yeah, I can't do anything about it. Hit that subscribe button and leave a like. After killing Ryakard, reload the area and kill the NPC there, you will get invaded and you will get the Crucible Breath spell. This spell is very useful, but you definitely don't want to use it too much because it drains your FP very quickly. You basically want to use it as like a controlling tool. With it you can finish off enemies reliably because you can just stun lock them. And this is very nice versus some of the most aggressive bosses in the game because you can just keep stun locking them and secure the kill reliably. Also in areas with a lot of aggressive mobs you can just control the entire area with the spell, as all that fire basically engulfs the entire area and you keep everything at distance, so it makes dangerous situations not so dangerous anymore. And with the setup in this video you will also deal good damage with this spell because it is going to be buffed by multiple sources actually, and you will see why in a moment or so. After picking up this spell we now have all the Crucible spells in the game, as we picked up the rest of the Crucible spells in part 1 and I showed you why those are very good in that video. Therefore the gear you want to wear is the Crucible Axe set. This set fits the theme of like a demon paladin very well, and it is one of the few sets in the game where each piece actually has a functional use outside of defense, because with every piece of the set you will get a damage increase to your Crucible incantations. Each piece of the set gives a 3.5% bonus to your Crucible spell's damage output, so the entire set is going to give you around 15% total damage increase as the bonuses are multiplicative. And then the good news is that the set also has very good defenses and goes past the 50 poise threshold, so now you will be able to start resisting hits, which is very nice with a hybrid build like this that casts a lot as well. You can get the entire set in the Aurisa Hero's Grave in Altus Plateau. After you defeat the bosses there, you will get every piece of the set in one go. And in the same cave you can also get the 3 Sentinel set actually. The set I wore in part 1 when you destroy the chariot, so that's very convenient actually. And you can get the Great Helm I wore from a merchant in Caelid right here. That combination also has very good defenses and looks nice, but it has no buffs or anything. I just mostly wore it for fashion. But a lot of people asked for it, so now you know as well. Now the magical side of the paladin is going to get upgrades as well, because when you get to the capital you definitely want to upgrade your casting seal. The best seal with this build and stat distribution is going to be the Gravelstone seal, as it has one of the highest scaling values for the setup, and more importantly about half of our incantations are in fact lightning based. You can get it if you go to the west capital Rampart Grace and then go and jump off the balcony. Kill him, it should be an easy fight. You should absolutely destroy him with the blade and incantations and you will get the seal. This seal increases the damage output of our lightning spells with 15% extra damage. In part 1 we picked up the Honed Bolt and Lightning Spear. You definitely still want to use them late game. In the late game you can pick up some very powerful red lightning spells, and you definitely want to pick these up and add them to the roster. First of all, you want to get the Ancient Dragon Prayer Book near the Crumbling Beast Grave Depths Grace in the Crumbling Farm Azula. Turning it in at the Giant Ass Turtle will give you the option to buy the Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike spell. This is a very good incantation that fits our build and theme also very well. It's really good against enemies that move a lot, so all these strikes hit, or versus big targets. For example, the Elden Beast is a very good example because you can just tear him apart with it, and the better you position yourself the more damage it will deal, so there is a lot of potential with it. And it also shows why this Demon Paladin build is so strong, because against every type of enemy you basically have an answer, as you are so versatile in your options, which makes this one of the strongest late game builds in the game. Then the other spell from the Ancient Dragon Prayer Book, you can also get it if you want. But an even better option is doing Fia's quest chain in my opinion, and at the end of it you will have to fight Lich Dragon 40 sacks. After you destroy him, you can turn in his remembrance at the round table hold and get the 46 Lightning Spear incantation, which is definitely a very good spell after the recent buffs. The 46 Lightning Spear is very similar to the Ancient Dragon's Lightning Spear spell, but the 46 Lightning Spear actually hits twice in a row instead of just once, so your damage output is going to be more. You can use this incantation as a melee range option to deal good damage when someone is on you, while also sending out 2 lightning waves that deal good AoE damage as well. Then what you also want to pick up is another Paladin-esque spell, which is the Blessing of the Earthtree. You can pick it up in the capital. You apply this incantation before a boss fight and it will keep healing you for 90 seconds long, and every second it will give you a little tick of health, and it's definitely very noticeable and useful unlike some of the other healing over time options in the game. And we do have the relatively high fate requirement for it, so definitely a nice functional spell to add to the roster. Make sure to get that Blasphemous blade to +10 and the seal to +25, and you will start completely destroying everything in the game. Regarding Talismans, you want to get the Fire Scorpion charm, so it buffs our weapons damage, as well as the Ash of War, Taker's Flames, which is purely fire damage, and your main damage dealing ability in the late game, as it also heals you a lot, so you definitely are going to use it frequently. When you get to the late game, you also definitely want to get the Shard of Alexander from completing Iron Fist Alexander's questline. It is a no-brainer, it will make Taker's Flames hit even harder. Then you will also want to get the Grey Jar Arsenal. If you don't know how to get that, then I will put a link in the description that shows you how to get it from A to Z basically. With this talisman we can still use medium load rolls, and we won't get into the heavy load category, because otherwise we would need to go deep into endurance, as we are wearing full heavy armor to get those medium load rolls, and this talisman fixes that problem for us. Then for the final slot, I do recommend either the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman to really make you unkillable basically, as you then will have all the healing, heavy armor, and you will also have a plus 20% damage negation from this thing, which is a very nice combination and makes you extremely tanky. Or you can also use the Ritual Swords Talisman, because if there's one build out there that makes it quite easy for you to always be at 100% HP, it's going to be this build with the Ash of War, Blessing of the Earthtree, the heal on kill, and so forth and so forth. So in a lot of situations you will utilize this talisman very well. Which talisman you want to use for that slot is going to be a choice for you to make, but either option is going to be very good. For the flask, we basically do the same thing for the same reason. We get the Flame Shrouding Crack tier that you can get from killing the Putrid Avatar in Kaled right here. The Fate not Crystal tier is still very good, because we are not fully soft capped on Fate, as this is a hybrid build. And with this Crystal tier it will still raise both the damage of our incantations as well as our weapon, which scales the most with Fate. So it's still definitely a very nice option in the late game. Regarding stats, I already went all over it quite detailed from the start of the game all the way to level 125 and level 150 in part 1, so check that video out for sure, because nothing changed in that regard. The only thing that is different is that you need 15 dexterity to wield the Blasphemous blade, so unfortunately you have to commit a cardinal sin and invest 3 points into dexterity. Yes, gross. Unfortunately, you will have to take an extra shower today to compensate for it. The good news, however, is that dexterity and strength have exactly the same scaling value on the blade, so you can just grab 3 points from strength and put it into dexterity. Now the thing with this hybrid build is that pretty much every type of aspect of the build gets buffed with the proper optimization shown in this video, and utilizes the fact that different aspects of the build can only buff certain types of spells or skills, which makes it so powerful as a hybrid build. To illustrate what I really mean with this, let's go over the 3 main type of components of our build, which are Earthtree incantations, lightning incantations, and fire damage through our blade, one of our Earthtree incantations, and our Ash of War. For the Crucible spells, we utilize our entire armor set, where each piece of our gear will boost the damage output of our Crucible spells, which are the best Earthtree incantations in the game. There are no gear sets in the game that buff lightning or fire related damage, so we use the gear slot to make sure that our Crucible spells get better. Then we have our seal to cover our lightning damage output, as it buffs our lightning incantations damage output. This works out very well, because there is no seal in the game that boosts Earthtree incantations, not even the Earthtree seal that literally has it in its name, or our fire damage specifically. Then we use a slot from our talisman and flask to buff the third type of elemental damage in our kit, which is fire, and also our main damaging element, because it is simply tied to our main weapon. Now, through the various aspects of a build, we have made sure to make everything in our kit and build stronger, which is not always the easiest to do with a hybrid build, but in this case it works out very well, because we just optimize pretty much every single slot and know what we can buff and can't buff within those different types of slots, which is why this build is just so strong. variety is the spice of life, and in this case that is the case as well, because you can just do anything you want with this build at any time you desire. The versatility of the build makes it incredibly fun to play, but also an extremely powerful build. First of all, you have infinite sustain because our weapon and our Ash of War just heals us very quickly and reliably, and it's very easy to get it off and can just fill up the entire bar all the way from 1 HP to a full HP bar like it's nothing when you use it correctly. But that's not all, because at the same time the blade and its Ash of War also deals massive damage, so it's basically an all-in-one type of deal that you get with the Blasphemous blade with no downsides really. Then we have covered 3 different types of elemental damage and have optimized for it in a true hybrid build fashion, which means we will never get gimped by resistances of any enemy in battle in the game, because we always have various options to deal with these situations. We can use our incantations and make very powerful combos with them that can easily one-shot enemies in the game, and with this build we really have covered every area of combat. We have long distance options, spammable AoE damaging options, hard hitting options for big targets and targets that move a lot, powerful buffs, healing over time, a controlling tool, a gap closer that bridges the gap between the melee and ranged aspect of a paladin, a spell that poise breaks pretty much everything, and so on and so on. This is the Demon Paladin build, one of the strongest and most versatile Elden Ring builds out there. If you liked the video, leave a like, that helps out a lot. Hit that subscribe button if you're still not subscribed, and hit the bell thing as well so you're the first to get notified when I upload something. And definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments.